Ambassador Haqqani, Ambassador Roya Rahmani here, and I see a friend, Ambassador Farhad from Tajikistan here, and many friends. It's an honor to be back here at Hudson. Thank you, Ambassador Haqqani, for hosting here today and for your frequent contribution and analysis on the situation of Afghanistan and what's happening in the region. Our topic of discussion today couldn't be timelier. We are fighting a brutal, multi-layered war while simultaneously talking peace, building a self-reliant state, preparing for the presidential elections, all amid dealing with shifting regional and international uncertainty. So, what's the future of Afghanistan look like? It is a serious question for all of us, particularly as we approach peace. It's not only a concern that defines the future of Afghanistan, but also the future of our relationship with the United States, our foundational partner. Let me first speak a little bit about what Afghanistan brings to this partnership, lay out some policy lines of the Afghan government, what we expect of our partner, and then say a few words about peace before opening up for a discussion. It's no secret that today's Afghanistan is a changed country. We no longer pose a security threat to the world, and by relentlessly pursuing a reform agenda geared towards self-reliance over the past 5 years, we are gradually becoming less of a financial burden. Afghanistan has also undergone a social transformation over the past 18 years. We firmly believe in our constitution and democratic institutions. We see our future in the global community of democratic nations. We have become a leader in regional connectivity and hope to see this new regional platform utilized for stability and security. Our brave national defense and security forces are fighting not only for our sovereignty, but we are on the front lines of global war on terror, for which we have sacrificed dearly to keep at bay. We are a strategic partner for our allies in the international community, foremost the United States. We, Afghans and Americans, have come this far through great sacrifice, for which we as a nation will forever be grateful. We're indebted to those who made the ultimate sacrifice for gains as a nation and our increased security as an international community. And I thank all members of the Afghan and US military, the veterans and families of the fallen, who served in Afghanistan and who are still serving today. In 2017, with the announcement of the Trump administration's South Asia strategy, Afghanistan and the US entered a new phase of our partnership. The South Asia strategy was a game changer for the region because it was based on conditions, not artificial timelines. It put serious pressure on spoilers in our neighborhood, and it refocused the US role on training, advising, and assisting Afghan troops in pursuing counter-terror objectives in partnership with our security sector. We still believe this is the correct approach to our partnership. I would argue that this is no longer America's war in Afghanistan. Afghans are fighting their own war. The support provided by the United States is reciprocated in our coordinated and in our cooperation on shared counterterrorism and intelligence objectives. We are making staggering sacrifices in human life to defend not only our country, but also to hold at bay those forces which threaten global security. This is how we understand the partnership, and there are many reasons why we believe the partnership remains critical. Our part of the world is still a hotbed of global threats, with over a dozen terrorist groups active in the region. We believe global terrorism is a global problem, and that requires long-term global response. And Afghanistan is providing its location as a base in the region from which to counter this threat, and its soldiers to fight this threat. As NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said last year, the cost of leaving is far greater than the cost of staying. But it's not a fixed partnership. It's open to review and should be reviewed as contexts change. The Afghan government has indeed been preparing for possible changes to the partnership. Our security forces are defending our nation on their own, and we have been working hard over the past 5 years to gradually absorb more financial responsibility for our armed forces and overall operating costs of our state. There are mechanisms within our agreement, the BSA and the US-Afghanistan Compact, that allow us to discuss and reconfigure our assistance. A responsible, gradual reduction in US troops and assistance and the complete conversion of all assistance to conditions-based, on-budget assistance would allow us to gradually cover more and more costs as we continue to increase domestic revenues and develop further human and military capacities and capabilities. To that end, in January, President Ashraf Ghani sent a letter to President Donald Trump requesting that we engage in a coordinated effort to reevaluate our partnership. This is the Afghan government's understanding of our long-term partnership. Now, we would ask the United States to provide clarification on what its long-term strategy and interests are in our country. I think what no one is prepared for is a sudden change to our partnership that fall outside of the boundaries of our guiding documents, or that betray all that both our countries have invested to build over the past 2 decades. Afghans have serious concerns and fears about a process in pursuit of peace that to date has not included any Afghan representation. Let me also say a few words about the ongoing peace talks with the Taliban. The Afghan people deserve an end to the war, and there we want to establish peace while protecting our countless gains of the past 18 years. 2 or 3 years ago, talking of peace with the Taliban was not part of the day-to-day vocabulary or our priorities. However, President Ghani changed that narrative. His efforts, including ones ranging from reaching out to the region with an open offer of unconditional peace talks at the Kabul Process Conference, to the successful execution of a ceasefire in June 2018, to sharing a comprehensive roadmap for peace, and introducing a negotiating team in Geneva Conference. Peace has become more real now than ever before. The reality of peace, however, has created uncertainties that still looms large. Uncertainties exist because peace is not the equivalent of a ceasefire. Peace is a much deeper concept and has a price tag attached to it. While peace has dividends, the cost of it demands national and regional consensus. For the internal part of the peace process, we are organizing a national consultative lawyer jirga, currently scheduled for April 29, which is expected to define the scope and limits of any future direct talks between the Afghan government and the Taliban. This will be followed by the 3rd round of Kabul Process Conference to discuss the regional aspects of a post-peace Afghanistan. The Afghan government has demonstrated our will for peace in action, and it is up to the Taliban now to show courage to engage in a broader and comprehensive face-to-face engagement with us. Let me also caution that peace in Afghanistan will not emerge out of any backdoor deal between the Taliban and any entity that is not the Afghan government. The Afghan government is the only legitimately elected representative of the Afghan people, and there is no substitute for that. In closing, let me reiterate that as a long-term strategic ally of the United States and the global community of democratic nations, Afghanistan now brings much to the table. We are an Islamic democracy, earnestly allied with the United States. Strategically placed as a land bridge between Central and South Asia, and in the heart of a region from which many of the world's threats of terrorist groups are emanating, but which is also ripe with economic opportunities. Our state-to-state agreements, particularly the bilateral security agreement, define our current and future relationship. We have already created joint working groups to assess and examine the exact level of U.S. military presence in Afghanistan that is efficient, effective, and sustainable. We also have concrete proposals to substantially reduce U.S. expenditure in Afghanistan without impacting the security situation on the ground. Finally, our fight is for justice, freedom, and our constitutional and human rights. We will continue to defend our democratic gains, whether the U.S. forces stay or withdraw from Afghanistan. And we will not seek a replacement should the United States choose to withdraw. We believe that as long as the threat of terrorism remains a global one, Afghanistan will remain an important ally, and that is not bound to change even if peace with the Taliban is achieved. With that, I'll stop here and we'll take up to the discussion. Thank you.